I always thought my life was a steady rhythm, a predictable melody played on the strings of routine. My name's Daniel, and I've been married to Claire for 12 years. She's the kind of woman who lights up a room. Blonde hair that catches the sun like a halo, eyes that shimmer with secrets I thought I decoded long ago. We live in a quiet suburb, our house a two-story sanctuary of beige walls and framed memories. I work as a structural engineer, designing bridges that connect places, while Claire runs a small boutique downtown, selling handmade jewelry and vintage dresses. It was a good life, or so I believed, until the cracks started showing. Not in the bridges I built, but in the foundation of us. It began with a hunch, a whisper in my gut I couldn't shake. Claire had been distant, her laughter less frequent, her touch more mechanical. She'd linger at the boutique longer than usual, claiming late shipments or a rush of customers. I didn't question it at first. Trust was the steel beam holding us together. But then came the night I found her phone unattended on the kitchen counter, buzzing with a message that wasn't meant for me. Tomorrow, same time. It read, from a name I didn't recognize, J. No last name, no context, just a single letter that felt like a splinter under my skin. I didn't confront her. Not yet. Instead, I watched. The next evening, she kissed me goodbye, her lips cold against mine, and said she'd be late again. I nodded, playing the part of the oblivious husband. But as her car pulled away, I followed. The streets were slick with rain, headlights blurring into streaks of gold and red. She didn't go to the boutique. She drove to a part of town I rarely visited, a cluster of warehouses and dim-lit bars. I parked a block away, my heart thudding like a hammer against my ribs, and watched her slip into a nondescript building with a rusted sign. The Loft. I waited, the minutes stretching into an hour, then two. When she emerged, her hair was mussed, her cheeks flushed in a way I hadn't seen in years. And she wasn't alone. A man walked beside her, tall, broad-shouldered, with a swagger that made my fists clench. I didn't know his face, but I knew his type. Confident, careless, the kind who takes what isn't his. They stood under a street lamp, her hand brushing his arm, his laughter cutting through the drizzle. Then she got into her car and drove home to me, as if nothing had happened. That night, she crawled into bed beside me, her scent different, sharper, muskier. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, the pieces falling into place. Claire was unraveling our life, thread by thread, and I was the fool who'd handed her the scissors. The next morning, I woke to the sound of Claire humming in the kitchen, pouring coffee like it was any other day. Her normalcy was a knife twisting deeper. How could she smile at me, call me honey, when she'd spent the previous night in someone else's arms? I played along, sipping the coffee she handed me, nodding at her small talk about a new necklace design. But inside, I was a storm gathering strength, dark clouds swirling with questions I wasn't ready to ask out loud. I needed proof, something concrete to hold up against her lies. So I started digging. At work, I barely focused. Blueprints blurred into meaningless lines as my mind replayed that scene under the street lamp. During my lunch break, I drove to the Loft. It was a private club, the kind with no website, no public listings, just a locked door and a keypad. I lingered across the street, watching people come and go. Mostly men, some women, all with a certain air of secrecy. Claire didn't fit here, or so I thought. What was she chasing in a place like this? Back home, I turned detective in my own house. Her phone was locked, but her laptop wasn't. She'd left it open on the dining table, logged into her email. I scrolled through the mundane, order confirmations, customer inquiries, until I found a thread buried in her trash folder. Messages from Jasper. No last name, just like the text. Can't wait to see you again, one said. You're my escape, read another. My stomach churned as I clicked further, finding photos, nothing explicit, but intimate. Claire laughing in a dimly lit room, Jasper's arm around her, his lips pressed to her temple. They'd been meeting for months, maybe longer. I cross-referenced the dates. Nights she'd claimed exhaustion or late work were nights she'd spent with him. The boutique was her alibi, a perfect cover I'd never questioned. I printed the emails, my hands trembling as the printer whirred. Each page a brick in the wall I was building between us. But proof wasn't enough. I needed to know who Jasper was, what he meant to her, why she'd chosen him over me. That evening I tailed her again. This time, she went straight to the loft, and I followed closer, slipping inside after a group of laughing strangers punched in the code. The interior was a maze of velvet curtains and low lights, a bar at one end, private rooms branching off like arteries. I spotted her in a corner booth, Jasper's hand on her thigh, her head thrown back in a laugh I hadn't heard in years. I ducked behind a pillar, my pulse roaring, and watched as they disappeared into one of those rooms, the door clicking shut like a gunshot in my chest. I didn't sleep that night. The image of Claire and Jasper burned behind my eyelids. Her ease with him, the way she leaned into his touch, a stranger stealing what I'd thought was mine. I sat in the garage, the cold concrete grounding me, and planned. Revenge wasn't a word I'd ever lived by, but it was growing roots now, deep and twisted. I wouldn't just confront her. I'd make her feel the weight of what she'd done, and Jasper too. They'd built their little world. I'd tear it down brick by brick. First, I needed to know Jasper. The emails gave me a start. His full name was Jasper Reed, a real estate developer with a flashy website and a LinkedIn profile dripping with arrogance. He was married too, with a wife named Margot and 2 kids, a picture-perfect family in a house twice the size of ours. The irony wasn't lost on me. 2 cheaters cheating on their cheaters. I dug deeper, using every tool at my disposal. Public records showed he owned the loft, a private playground for people like him. Rich, bored, entitled. Claire was just another conquest, I told myself, but that didn't dull the ache. I started following him. His routine was predictable: office downtown, gym, drinks at upscale bars. He carried himself like a king, oblivious to the shadow I'd become. One afternoon, I saw him with Margot at a cafe, her hand on his, their laughter a mirror of what Claire and I once had. Did she know? Did she suspect? I wondered if I could use her, but that was a card for later. Meanwhile, Claire played her part at home, oblivious to my growing distance. She'd chatter about her day, kiss my cheek, sleep beside me like nothing had changed. I hated her for it, but I hated myself more for still loving her, for the part of me that wanted to pull her back. Instead, I fed the storm. I installed a tracking app on her phone, easy enough with her password, the date we met, a detail she hadn't bothered to change. Confirmed what I'd seen. The loft, Jasper's office, even a hotel once. Each ping on the map was a nail in the coffin of our marriage. By week's end, I had a plan. It wasn't enough to expose them. I wanted them to suffer, to lose what they valued most. For Claire, it was her boutique, her reputation, her perfect little life. For Jasper, it was his empire, his control. I'd hit them where it hurt, and I'd do it slow, surgical, so they'd feel every cut. The first strike was subtle, a whisper of chaos. Claire's boutique relied on her image, small-town charm, handmade elegance. I knew the local gossip mill would devour a scandal, so I planted the seed. Using a burner phone, I texted a few of her regular customers, women I'd met at her store openings, chatty types with loose lips. Heard Claire's been spending time at the loft, I wrote. Not exactly the family-friendly vibe she sells, huh? I attached a blurry photo I'd snapped of her and Jasper outside the club, their closeness unmistakable. Within days, I overheard whispers at the grocery store. Claire's name tangled with words like shame and disappointing. Her sales dipped. She complained about it over dinner, puzzled, blaming the economy. I nodded, hiding my smirk behind a glass of wine. Jasper was next. His real estate deals thrived on trust, clients, investors, banks. I couldn't topple him directly, not yet, but I could chip away. I found his biggest project, a luxury condo development downtown, and dug into the permits. As an engineer, I knew the system, the loopholes. An anonymous tip to the city inspector about potential structural concerns was enough to trigger a review. It wouldn't collapse his deal, but it'd cost him time, money, stress. I watched from afar as he stormed out of a meeting, phone to his ear, barking at someone. Good. Let him squirm. At home, I kept up the charade. Claire sensed something off. I caught her watching me, her brow furrowed, but she didn't ask. Maybe she was too deep in her own lies to notice mine. I started leaving clues, testing her. A receipt from a bar near the loft accidentally left in my jacket pocket. A vague comment about working late myself, mirroring her excuses. She'd fidget, change the subject, her guilt a silent confession. I fed on it, letting it fuel me. One night, she came home late again, her blouse wrinkled, her excuse flimsy. I waited until she was asleep, then checked her phone. The tracker showed she'd been at Jasper's office, not the loft. A new message from him. Margot's suspicious. We need to be careful. So his wife was waking up too. Perfect. I forwarded the message to my email, another piece of ammunition. Then I slipped into bed beside her. The woman I'd vowed to cherish. Now a stranger I was dismantling. The next day I upped the ante. I called Margot Reed, Jasper's wife, from a payphone, rare, but still functional downtown. I kept it vague. You might want to check your husband's late-night meetings. Ask about Claire. I hung up before she could respond, my voice a ghost in her ear. Let her stew, let her confront him. If Jasper's home life cracked, his focus would falter, and my next move would hit harder. A week later, the ripples were spreading. Claire came home rattled, her hands shaky as she poured herself a glass of wine. People are talking, she said, her voice tight. At the boutique. They're saying things. About me. About where I've been. I feigned concern, asking what she meant, but she waved it off, muttering about jealous competitors. I saw the fear in her eyes, though, the mask slipping. Her perfect world was fraying, and she didn't know why. I offered a hug, my arms a trap she didn't suspect, and she leaned into me, oblivious to the architect of her unraveling. Jasper was feeling it too. I'd hacked into a local news blog, nothing sophisticated, just a weak password, and posted a tip. Read developments cutting corners on condos? I linked it to the permit review, stirring public doubt. The story gained traction. I saw it shared on X, comments piling up. Jasper's face appeared in a grainy photo, his jaw tight, leaving his office. His investors would be calling soon, I bet. Chaos was my ally now, and I wielded it like a scalpel. Then Margot made her move. I'd been tailing Jasper again, parked outside his gym, when I saw her pull up in a sleek SUV. She stormed inside, and minutes later, they emerged, her shouting, him gesturing wildly. I couldn't hear the words, but her finger jabbed at his chest, her face red with fury. She'd connected the dots, thanks to my nudge. Jasper glanced around, paranoid, as if he sensed me watching. He didn't see me, but I saw him, crumbling, cornered. That night, Claire's phone buzzed incessantly. She silenced it, but not before I glimpsed Jasper's name. Later, when she showered, I checked. A flurry of texts. Margot knows. We're done for now. Lay low. Claire had replied. What about us? His response was cold. Us was fun. Protect yourself. Fun. That word hit me like a brick. I'd been her life, her partner, and he'd reduced her to a pastime. Rage boiled, but I channeled it. This was my opening. I decided to escalate. Claire's boutique had a lease renewal coming up. I knew the landlord, an old college buddy. A quiet word about her reputation issues. A hint she might not pay rent reliably, and he'd hesitate. For Jasper, I'd target his pride. I'd seen him flaunt a vintage Mustang at the loft. A car show was coming up, his chance to shine. I'd make sure he didn't. The how was still forming, but the why was clear. They'd betrayed me, and I'd bury them in the wreckage of their own lives. The air in our house grew thick with unspoken truths, a fog I navigated with cold precision. Claire was unraveling. Her boutique's lease renewal hit a snag, just as I'd orchestrated. My old friend Tom, the landlord, called me to confirm her reliability, and I sighed, feigning regret. She's been distracted lately, Tom. I'd hate to see you stuck with a flaky tenant. He grumbled about needing stability, and I knew the seed was planted. Claire came home that night, pale, muttering about misunderstandings with the property management. I poured her a drink, my face a mask of sympathy, while inside I savored the first taste of her world buckling. Jasper's turn was coming. The car show was 2 days away, his Mustang his pride and joy, a gleaming symbol of the man he thought he was. I'd seen him polish it at the loft, heard him brag to Claire about its rarity. Destroying it outright was too obvious. I wanted something subtler, more humiliating. I spent a night researching online forums, mechanic tips, and found my weapon. Sugar syrup in the gas tank, invisible until it clogged the engine, turning his prized ride into a useless hunk of metal mid-show. I drove to the loft under cover of darkness, the syrup in a thermos, and poured it in while the lot was empty. The next morning, I imagined him strutting to the event, oblivious to the ruin waiting. At home, Claire's phone stayed silent. No more frantic texts from Jasper. His fun dismissal had cut her loose, and I watched her drift, lost without his tether. She tried to bridge the gap with me, cooking dinner one night, her hands trembling as she chopped vegetables. "We should take a trip," she said, voice brittle. "Rekindle things." I smiled, agreeing, knowing she was grasping at ghosts. The meal tasted like ash, but I ate, letting her believe we could mend what she'd shattered. Then the car show hit. I didn't go, I didn't need to. X posts flooded my feed later. Jasper Reed's Mustang sputtering on the judging line, smoke billowing, the crowd laughing as he kicked the tire in fury. "$1 million man with a broke-down toy," one caption read. I scrolled, sipping coffee, picturing his red face, his ego in tatters. Claire saw it too. She gasped at her phone, then glanced at me, searching for a reaction. I shrugged. "Guess he's having a bad day." Her eyes narrowed, but she said nothing. Suspicion was creeping in, and I welcomed it. That evening, I checked her email again. A new message from Jasper. "Margot's leaving me. This is your fault too." Claire hadn't replied yet, but I could feel her panic across the room as she stared at her screen. 2 marriages collapsing, and I was the silent architect. My revenge was a symphony now, each note precise, building to a crescendo they couldn't escape. Claire's boutique took the next hit. Tom called her, over speakerphone, so I heard every word, saying he'd heard things and couldn't renew the lease without a higher deposit. She argued, voice cracking, but he held firm. When she hung up, she slumped at the kitchen table, head in her hands. "I don't understand," she whispered. "It's like everything's falling apart." I rubbed her shoulder, murmuring platitudes, while my mind cataloged every tear she shed. She'd built that store with my support. Late nights, loans I co-signed, and now it was slipping away, a punishment she didn't see coming. Jasper's world was crumbling too. The condo project stalled, inspections dragged on, fueled by my tip, and investors pulled back. A local paper ran a story, "Reed Developments faces scrutiny," with a photo of Jasper looking haggard outside his office. Margot had filed for divorce, I learned from public records, claiming infidelity. I wondered if she'd named Claire. I hoped she had. Let them drown in their own mess. I mailed her a printout of Jasper's emails to Claire, anonymously, with a note, "You deserve to know." If she hadn't already, she'd confront Claire soon, and I'd watch the fallout. I kept Claire close, playing the doting husband. We went for walks, her arm in mine, her silence heavy. She'd stopped mentioning Jasper, but I saw his ghost in her eyes. Guilt, longing, fear. One night, she broke. "Daniel, do you still love me?" she asked, voice small. I paused, letting the question hang, then said, "Always." It wasn't a lie, not entirely, but it was a blade I wielded now. She cried, clinging to me, and I held her, knowing she'd never suspect the storm I'd unleashed. The next day, I struck again. Claire's jewelry supplier, a woman I'd charmed at a trade show years ago, got an email from a concerned friend, me, via a fake account. It hinted at Claire's unstable personal life, affecting her business. The supplier called to discuss terms, and Claire's voice rose in frustration as she pleaded her case. I listened from the hall, unseen, as another pillar of her life wobbled. She hung up, muttering about sabotage, and I wondered if she'd connect the dots. Not yet, I decided. She was too lost in her own wreckage. Jasper's Mustang was towed away, I read online. A totaled relic. His humiliation was public now. A man undone by his own hubris. I pictured him alone, wife gone, empire cracking, and felt a dark satisfaction. But it wasn't enough. I wanted them to face each other, to see the ruin they'd wrought. The endgame was near, and I was ready to pull the final strings. Claire's boutique closed its doors a week later. The lease was officially dead, and her supplier had backed out, citing unreliable partners. She spent hours boxing up inventory, her movements sluggish, like a puppet with cut strings. I offered to help, carrying crates to the garage, my presence a silent taunt. Maybe it's a fresh start, I said, watching her flinch. She nodded, but her eyes were hollow, the spark I'd once loved extinguished. The gossip had spread, customers stopped coming, friends grew distant. She was a pariah now, and I'd made it happen without ever raising my voice. Jasper's fall accelerated. His condo project was shelved, too much bad press, too little funding. I saw him once, driving a rental car, his Mustang a memory. He looked thinner, his swagger gone, a man stripped bare. Margot's divorce filing hit the courts, and Claire's name surfaced in the documents. Texts and emails leaked, painting her as the other woman. I didn't leak them. Margot must have, thanks to my nudge. Claire got the call from a mutual friend, her face draining of color as she listened. "They're saying it's me," she whispered. "In the papers." I feigned shock, asking questions I already knew the answers to, letting her stew in the exposure. That night, she confronted me. "Did you know?" she asked, voice trembling. "About Jasper?" I tilted my head, calm as stone. "Know what, Claire?" She faltered, unable to say it, and retreated to the bedroom. I let her go, savoring the moment. She was cornered, her lies a noose tightening with every step. I checked her phone later, desperate messages to Jasper, unanswered. He'd ghosted her, and she was alone, just as I'd planned. I escalated the personal angle. I invited Margot over, pretending it was about a community project. She arrived, eyes red but sharp, and I steered the conversation to Jasper. "He hurt us both," I said, dropping Claire's name casually. Margot's jaw tightened. She knew. I handed her a coffee, my voice soft. "She's still my wife, but I'm figuring things out." Margot nodded, a silent ally forged in betrayal. I didn't need her to act, just to simmer to keep the pressure on. The next day, Claire found a note slipped under our door. Margot's handwriting, I recognized from her divorce filing. "You ruined my family," it read. Claire stared at it, shaking, and I watched, silent, as her world shrank further. My revenge was a tapestry now, threads of chaos woven tight, and I was ready to pull the final knot. Claire stopped, leaving the house. The note from Margot was the tipping point. She crumpled, spending days in pajamas, staring at the TV without seeing it. I cooked for her, played the concerned husband, but my every move was calculated. "Maybe you should call Jasper," I suggested once, watching her freeze. She shook her head, mute, and I knew he'd abandoned her completely. Her boutique's social media pages went dark, flooded with snide comments from ex-customers. "Karma's a funny thing," one read. I liked that one anonymously from a burner account. Jasper's empire was in free fall. A second project, a retail plaza, lost funding, and his company filed for bankruptcy. I read it in the news, sipping whiskey, imagining him in his empty mansion, wife and kids gone, his toys sold off. I'd mailed his car show buddies a tip about the Mustang, check the tank next time, and word spread he'd been sabotaged. No proof tied it to me, but the suspicion gnawed at him, I was sure. He deserved it, every ounce of doubt and disgrace. Then came the confrontation I'd engineered. I accidentally scheduled a dinner with Margot at our house, knowing Claire would be there. Margot arrived, her gaze icy as it landed on Claire, who shrank into the couch. "You," Margot spat before I could intervene. "You took everything from me." Claire stammered, denying it, but Margot pulled out printed emails, ones I'd sent her, and threw them on the table. "Liar," she hissed. I stepped in, feigning peacekeeper, but let them clash, words cutting deeper than I ever could. Margot stormed out, and Claire sobbed, begging me to believe her. "It's not what it looks like," she said. I nodded, saying nothing, letting her drown in her own excuses. The next morning, I left a photo on the kitchen counter. One I'd taken at the loft, Claire and Jasper laughing, framed by the club's neon glow. She found it while I was at work and called me, hysterical. "How did you get this?" she screamed. I stayed calm. "I've known for a while, Claire. We need to talk." She hung up, and when I got home, she was gone. Suitcase missing. Car too. A note. "I'm sorry. I can't face you." I smiled. She thought she'd escaped, but I wasn't done. I tracked her phone. She'd fled to a motel an hour away. Perfect. My endgame was in motion, and she'd walked right into it, thinking distance would save her. Jasper, too, was about to feel the final blow. I'd saved the best for last. Claire's motel hideout was a cheap, neon-lit dump on the edge of town, a fitting stage for her downfall. I didn't follow her yet. I let her sit, stewing in her guilt, thinking she'd outrun the mess. Instead, I turned to Jasper, the last pillar to topple. His bankruptcy left him vulnerable, but I wanted more than financial ruin. I wanted him broken, personally, publicly. I'd learned his kids went to a private school, a status symbol he clung to even now. A call to the headmaster, anonymous, hinting at unstable family dynamics and questionable ethics, was enough to spark a review. Word would leak, parents talk, and his children's expulsion would be the final humiliation. Then I went bigger. Jasper had a gala coming up, a last-ditch effort to salvage his reputation among the elite. I'd seen the invite on his abandoned office desk when I'd scoped it out weeks ago. I RSVP'd as a +1 under a fake name, using a contact from my engineering days to slip in. The night arrived, and I stood in the shadows of the ballroom, watching him schmooze, his suit ill-fitting now, his smile forced. I'd brought a USB drive, loaded with a slideshow of his emails to Claire, photos from the loft, and a voice recording I'd snagged of him bragging about handling his wife. During the keynote, I swapped it with the presenters, and as Jasper took the stage, the screen lit up with his sins. The room gasped, then buzzed, as Claire's face flashed beside his, their affair laid bare. He froze, stammering, as guests whispered and phones snapped photos. I slipped out, hearing security rush in, his career and dignity torched in one glorious blaze. X lit up that night, Jasper Reed's gala disaster, and I knew he'd never recover. He'd lost his family, his money, his pride, and now his name. My hands were clean, my tracks covered. Claire was next. I drove to the motel, parking a block away. She'd checked in under her maiden name, the tracker confirmed. I left a package at her door, copies of the gala slideshow, a note, "You're famous now. Come home if you dare." I watched from my car as she opened it, her scream muffled by the thin walls. She didn't leave, didn't call. She just sat, broken, and I drove away, the night swallowing my triumph. The next day, I filed for divorce, citing abandonment. The papers were ready, my lawyer primed with evidence, emails, photos, her note. Claire's life was ashes, Jasper's a ruin, and I stood atop it all, the quiet husband who'd burned their world down. Revenge tasted sharp, cold, and I wasn't sorry. The divorce papers sat on my desk, a neat stack of finality, but I wasn't ready to serve them yet. Claire was still at the motel, a ghost of herself, and I wanted her to feel the full weight of her collapse before I cut the last tie. I checked her phone's location daily. She hadn't moved, hadn't reached out. The package I'd left had done its job. X posts from the gala had gone viral, her name tangled with Jasper's in a web of scorn. Homewrecker trended locally, and I imagined her scrolling, seeing her boutique's legacy replaced by infamy. I didn't pity her. She'd chosen this path, and I'd paved it with thorns. Jasper's kids were expelled from their school the next day. I'd gotten a tip from a contact who knew the headmaster. Disruptive family issues. The official reason, but whispers of his bankruptcy and the gala sealed it. I pictured him explaining it to them, his voice cracking, his authority gone. His ex-wife, Margot, had custody now, and I mailed her a final gift. A USB with every email, photo, and text I'd collected, labeled for the courts. She'd use it to bury him in the divorce, and I'd watch from the sidelines, my hands invisible but heavy. At home, I dismantled Claire's traces. Her jewelry tools went into storage, her photos into a box. The house felt lighter, mine again, though her scent lingered like a stubborn stain. I kept up appearances, told neighbors she was visiting family. Let them nod sympathetically. They'd hear the truth soon enough, and I'd play the wounded husband perfectly. One night, I found a necklace she'd made me years ago. A silver chain with a tiny bridge pendant. Ironic, given the chasm between us now. I crushed it under my heel, the snap echoing in the quiet. Then I struck Claire again. Her car, still parked at the motel, was a lease in my name. I'd co-signed it, a gift from happier days. I called the dealership, reported it abandoned, and watched from across the street as a tow truck hauled it away. She stumbled out, shouting, but the driver shrugged, paperwork in hand. She had no money, no job, no wheels now. I drove off, her figure shrinking in my rear view, a speck of desperation. Let her walk, I thought. Let her feel the miles she'd put between us. The final act was brewing, but I needed them together one last time. I sent Jasper a text from a burner, mimicking Claire's tone. Meet me at the loft. We need to fix this. He'd bite, I knew. His pride was shattered, but his ego still craved control. Claire would follow if I pulled the right string. I was ready to end it, to watch them face the wreckage I'd built. Jasper took the bait. I staked out the loft that night, hidden in my car, and saw him arrive, disheveled, driving a beat-up sedan, a far cry from his Mustang days. He paced outside, checking his phone, waiting for Claire. She wasn't there yet, but I'd fixed that. I called her from another burner, disguising my voice with a cheap app. Jasper's at the loft. I rasped. He's got something to say. Don't miss it. She hesitated. I heard her breath catch, then hung up. 30 minutes later, her cab pulled up, her face gaunt as she stepped out, clutching her purse like a lifeline. They met under the same street lamp where I'd first seen them, a twisted full circle. I rolled down my window, just enough to hear. You ruined me, Jasper snapped, voice hoarse. Claire flinched. You left me hanging. Margot's got everything now. She fired back. You used me, Jasper. I lost my store, my life. He laughed, bitter. Your life? Look at me. They argued, voices rising, oblivious to the trap closing around them. I'd rigged it earlier, a tiny camera in the lamppost streaming to a private server. Every word, every gesture, recorded. I tipped off a local blogger too, a sleazy type who'd jump at scandal. Trouble at the loft tonight, I texted, with a still from the feed. He arrived minutes later, phone out, filming as Jasper shoved Claire's shoulder, as she slapped his hand away. The blogger grinned, already typing. By morning, it had hit the web. Lovers' spat turns ugly, and their shame would be immortalized. I watched them unravel, my chest tight with a cold thrill, then drove away as sirens wailed in the distance. Someone must have called the cops. Perfect chaos. Back home, I uploaded the full video to X from a fake account, tagging Margot and the blogger. It spread like wildfire. Comments piling up, pathetic, disgusting. Their names mud forever. Claire's cab took her back to the motel. Jasper peeled off in his junker, and I leaned back, whiskey in hand. They'd torn each other apart, just as I'd wanted, and the world saw it. My revenge was a mirror now, reflecting their ugliness back at them. The next day, I served the divorce papers. A courier dropped them at the motel. She signed, trembling, according to his report. I didn't care what she thought anymore. Jasper's fate was sealed too, arrested for public disturbance, a cherry on his downfall. I'd won, and they'd lost everything. Claire's signature on the divorce papers was shaky, a scrawl of defeat. The courier said she'd barely spoken, just handed them back and shut the door. I pictured her in that dingy motel room, surrounded by peeling wallpaper and her own regrets, and felt nothing. No love, no guilt, just a hollow satisfaction. The house was officially mine now. She'd waived her claim, too broken to fight. I sold her jewelry tools online, pocketed the cash, and redecorated, new paint, new furniture, erasing her from every corner. Neighbors asked, and I told them. She left me. Couldn't handle the truth. They clucked, offered casseroles, and I played the part, the wronged man moving on. Jasper's arrest made headlines, petty, but public. The video I'd posted fueled it. Cops had seen it, traced the disturbance call. He spent a night in jail, released on bail he could barely afford. His mugshot circulated. Hollow eyes, unshaven, a king dethroned. Margot's lawyer used it in court, and ex-post speculated he'd lose visitation rights. I mailed his old car club a link to the clip, captioned, "Your star's shining bright." They'd laugh, blacklist him, and his last refuge would vanish. I didn't stop there. I tipped his landlord about the bankruptcy, and eviction notices followed. He'd be on the street soon, a fitting end. Claire tried to call once, a week later. I let it ring, her number flashing like a plea I'd never answer. She left a voicemail, sobbing, incoherent. "I didn't mean it, Daniel, please." I deleted it, then blocked her. She had no one now. Jasper gone, friends lost, family distant. The motel kicked her out days later. I tracked her phone to a shelter downtown. She'd hit bottom, and I'd pushed her there, step by step. I slept better that night, the silence of the house a reward. Then I tied up loose ends. The loft's owner, Jasper, lost it to creditors, but I nudged the city with an anonymous complaint about illicit activities. Inspections shut it down, a final nail in his legacy. Margot thrived, posting about new beginnings online, her kids smiling beside her. I'd freed her, in a way, and she'd never know my role. Claire and Jasper, though, they'd feel me in every shadow, every loss, without proof I'd been there. The revenge was complete, but I wasn't done living. I planned a trip, somewhere warm, alone, to wash off the last of this. They'd haunt each other, not me. Weeks passed, and the dust settled into a quiet I'd earned. Claire's phone went offline, battery dead or discarded. I didn't care. A friend of a friend mentioned seeing her at the shelter, thin and silent, sorting donations. Her blonde hair was dull now, they said, her halo tarnished. I nodded, uninterested, and changed the subject. She was a memory fading, a chapter closed. The divorce finalized that month. Clean, uncontested, my assets intact. I sold the house too, pocketing a profit, and moved to a condo downtown, sleek and modern, a fresh slate. Jasper's eviction hit the news. A blurry photo of him hauling bags from his mansion, head down. He'd relocated to a cheap apartment, the kind with flickering lights and nosy neighbors. His kids' school posted a fundraiser. He wasn't invited. I sent his ex-clients a mock condolence card, "Sorry for your loss of a visionary," and chuckled as I mailed it. The gala video still circulated, a meme now, his stammering face a punchline. He tried to sue the blogger, I heard, but lacked the cash. Every door he'd once walked through was locked, and I held the keys. I ran into Margot once at a coffee shop. She recognized me from that staged dinner, smiled tightly. "You're better off," she said, sipping her latte. I agreed, keeping it vague, and she left without asking more. She'd won her battle, thriving in a way Claire and Jasper never would. I liked that collateral victory, a bonus I hadn't planned. Later, I checked X. Claire's old account was deleted, Jasper's dormant. They'd vanished from the digital world, shadows of who they'd been. One night, I found an old photo of Claire and me, tucked in a drawer, smiling at our wedding, young and naive. I stared at it, tracing the moment I trusted her, then tossed it in the trash. She'd betrayed me with Jasper, an unusual twist. Real people, not strangers, tearing apart real lives. I'd rebuilt mine, though stronger, sharper. I booked that trip, Bali, a month away, beaches and solitude. The past was ash and I was free, but a final twist lingered. A letter arrived, no return address, postmarked from the shelter. Claire's handwriting. I know it was you. I'm sorry. I burned it in the sink, the flames licking her words away. She'd figured it out too late and it changed nothing. I smiled, watching the smoke curl, my revenge a perfect circle. The Bali sun hit my skin like a cleanse, waves crashing as I sipped a beer on the shore. 2 months since the letter, 3 since the divorce, and I was a new man, lighter, untethered. The condo was home now, my job thriving. I'd landed a bridge project spanning 2 cities, a metaphor I didn't dwell on. Claire and Jasper were ghosts, their lives a distant echo I'd silenced. I didn't check on them, didn't need to. My revenge had been thorough, a slow poison they'd drunk willingly, and I'd walked away clean. Back home, a coworker mentioned Jasper in passing. Spotted at a gas station, pumping fuel for minimum wage, his hands stained with grease. Looked like he'd aged 20 years, he said, shaking his head. I shrugged, feigning disinterest, but inside I pictured it. The king of real estate reduced to a pump jockey, his swagger crushed under life's heel. Margot had remarried, I learned online. A quiet ceremony, her kids beaming. She'd moved on, her victory complete, and I toasted her silently with my next beer. Claire surfaced once more indirectly. A shelter volunteer posted a blog, Stories of Resilience, featuring a woman matching her description. Lost everything, it read, but finding purpose in small acts. I skimmed it, unimpressed. She could scrub floors or serve soup. It didn't erase what she'd done. Her apology burned in my memory, but it was ash now like her note. She'd seen my hand in her ruin, and that was enough. Her knowing powerless to fight back. I kept the camera footage from the loft, a private trophy, locked in a safe. Sometimes I'd watch it. Her slap, his shove, their voices raw with desperation. Proof of my triumph. It wasn't joy I felt, but closure, a knot untied. They'd betrayed me in a way I'd never imagined, real and raw, and I'd turned it back on them, cruelly, meticulously. The unusual part wasn't the act itself, but the players. My wife, her lover, people I'd known, trusted, now strangers I'd destroyed. On my last night in Bali, I stood by the ocean, the horizon endless. I didn't forgive them, wouldn't, but I let them go, their shadows sinking into the tide. My life was mine again, built on the rubble of theirs, and it was enough. I flew home the next day, the past behind me, the future a blank page I'd write alone.